So, I'm an American, but I am moving to Norway in less than 3 months. And one thing that I didn't think would be nearly as big of a struggle as it is learning Norwegian. As someone with a Norwegian dad, I thought, oh, this will be really easy. But no. Even though he spoke to me in Norwegian growing up, it's actually like way harder than I thought it would be to actually become fluent. Even though I can understand a lot of Norwegian, actually speaking was always just not something that was natural for me. So why is it so hard? A good place to start would be dialects. Even though I had a Norwegian dad, it never really came up in any conversation that there were like a bunch of different dialects in Norway. So I literally grew up my whole life thinking, oh yeah, all Norwegians just speak the same. Because my dad's from Oslo. He lived all around, but he basically speaks Oslo dialect. And it just never occurred to me that maybe there's other dialects in the country. So a couple years ago, I went to Folkehøyskole on the West Coast. And as you Norwegians probably could imagine, I had a pretty rude awakening. I think it's the kind of thing where if you're Norwegian, you just are used to this. And like you hear people with different dialects your whole life. But for me, as someone who grew up in the US with a Norwegian dad who only spoke one dialect, it might as well be Chinese, to be honest. I don't mean that in any like offensive way or anything. It's very different than what I was used to. Anyway, it was definitely a bit of a challenging year in terms of the language. But I think I'm glad I went on the West Coast because I think if I didn't, I would have just been so comfortable with being in Oslo or like that area that I had known more. So I'm glad I went on the West Coast and saw that there's an entirely different language here. Yeah, so the dialects were definitely a unexpected factor, I guess you could say. But if you're an American and you want to learn Norwegian, first of all, you're probably going to just learn bokmål, like the Oslo dialect. But just be aware that there are other dialects. And when you actually move to Norway, just don't expect everyone to speak exactly the same, like the way you learned on Duolingo. Another big thing that makes Norwegian a lot harder for Americans than I think it might seem like on the surface is the pronunciation. And I think for someone like me, I mean, I have a pretty big advantage over most people because I at least heard Norwegian growing up. But even with that, if you don't actually speak it growing up, like consistently, it is surprisingly difficult to just speak sentences without sounding like a complete foreigner, like instantly. And I'm sure a lot of people watching this know what I'm talking about. When you have a non-native Norwegian trying to speak Norwegian, and a lot of people sort of tend to get a little bit frustrated sometimes with that, which I think is another challenge in and of itself for foreigners. Norwegians are very nice and accepting and open people, but when it comes to the language, I have noticed there is a bit of sort of, not the most, I guess, open to hearing things incorrect in their language, if that makes sense, which is honestly pretty understandable when you grow up in Norway. Like you're used to hearing fluent Norwegian. So yeah, and I guess it's a little different than in America where we're just so used to immigrants. Like that's our entire history. So we're kind of used to different ways of speaking and imperfect accents and stuff like that. I mean, I wouldn't even say imperfect. They're just different accents of American English. But yeah, it's a little different in Norway. Like there is a bit higher pressure to speak properly because, yeah, I mean, that's just more normalized, I guess, and it's more what people are used to. So that is definitely another struggle. If you plan to visit Norway or especially if you plan to move there, I think one of the biggest things I'm going to have to learn is just having a little bit of tough skin and just being like, yeah, I'm just going to speak Norwegian and I'm going to force myself to, even if I sound like a complete idiot. I'm sure people will think it's weird or like maybe make fun of me even. But yeah, just definitely going to be a thing that I just have to grit my teeth and just speak it because that's the only way that I'm going to actually become fluent eventually. And that actually reminds me of another thing, which is Norwegian English fluency. Norwegians are famously fluent in English, and that sounds like a great thing on the surface. But if you're trying to learn Norwegian, not exactly, because every time you try to practice Norwegian, the Norwegians want to practice English. So they will switch to English the second they hear any sliver of non-native Norwegian. They will switch to English. And maybe this isn't 100% true, but it's probably 99% of the time it's true. Yeah, I guess that's just another thing to be aware of. And another reason I think when I move, I'm just going to have to be really, just learn to kind of be a little tough skinned and tell people that I want them to speak Norwegian to me. But I know that's going to be easier said than done. But yeah, that is another thing, because it's like, it's great that Norwegians can speak English, but it really just takes away that pressure where you're like forced to learn. Everyone pretty much speaks English. So that is definitely, in terms of learning Norwegian, that is definitely another challenge that I'm going to have to overcome. And yeah, definitely something that you're going to have to be aware of, I guess. But yeah, I remember like I spent a year living in Norway back in 2022, as I just said earlier. And I tried to speak Norwegian, but at the same time, when you just want to socialize with people, that's when it becomes like really hard to force yourself to speak Norwegian, because you're like, I just want to connect with this person, you know? Like, I just want to make a friend or have a conversation. And if I switch to Norwegian, I won't be able to express myself nearly as clearly or quickly. And so that's why it's like, oh, like you're trying to avoid that awkwardness. And that's the kind of thing I'm just going to have to completely try to block out of my brain, I guess. Because, yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy, but it's just one of those things that is like, you basically have to force yourself to have a little bit of misery in the short term to get results in the long term, I guess, as are a lot of things in life. But yeah, it's definitely very true when it comes to learning Norwegian. When you go there and you're able to communicate in English with people, it's so easy to just hang on to that. And I think if you just tell people, please speak Norwegian to me, and I'm not going to speak English to you no matter what, then yeah, you might have some annoying situations in the short term, but hopefully that would end up with you being able to get more comfortable with Norwegian. This is coming from someone that really struggled with this, even though I literally lived in Norway for almost an entire year. I mean, I will say it was harder because of the dialects, but yeah, at a certain point, you just have to like stop making excuses and just speak Norwegian. And I think to add on to that, I guess, not to go into politics or anything, but I think especially in the modern climate with everything, if you're an American, you really should make an effort to speak Norwegian or any language that you're going to visit that country of. Because, like, unfortunately, things have changed a little bit and there's a little bit of tense feelings in the air. So I feel like just speaking the language is like at least making an effort. Say things like ha det, hi, tusen takk, vær så god, like just basic things like that. Just learn the basics. I feel like that would help. Just make people more open to talking to you and not just like assuming, oh, they're just going to speak English to me. Because it's one thing for Norwegians to want to speak English, but it's another to like impose English on everyone and assume, oh, of course they want to speak English because everyone knows English. And I guess that just kind of goes into the whole, like, I think if you really want to make Norwegian friends, which is a whole nother topic, I guess, speaking Norwegian is a very good place to start. Going back to like my whole situation, that is definitely a big kind of struggle I have, I guess, because I know how important the language is for making friends and getting a job, which is even more imminently important for me. At the same time, like, even though I know how important it is, like, to know Norwegian in order to integrate into everything fully and not just be that one American dude that's lived there for like 20 years or even 5 to 10 years and I can't speak Norwegian. Yeah, like that is definitely not something I want to do. The language is definitely something that I have less than 3 months, but I have a bit of time, and my goal is to just immerse myself in Norwegian as much as possible while I'm still in the US, even though it's not easy. I think I've seen some people make videos on this actually, where they talk about how they put so much pressure on themselves to learn Norwegian. And then they're just like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, I think it's a delicate balance, of course, you know, like it's very important to really make an effort to learn a language. Otherwise you're never going to. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to beat myself up just because I'm not fully fluent before moving, because it is hard. And especially with all the other stuff I have to deal with, like just moving in general. Like, it's a lot of stress. So I don't want to, be unrealistic to myself and be like, oh, I got a new Norwegian right now. My goal is to be at least fairly conversational within a few months, at max like 6 months. And I think I can do that. And then maybe a few more years I can be more fluent. But yeah, the language definitely is something that adds to like the anxiety, I guess, of moving. But yeah, it's super important for being able to actually like move successfully in the long term, I think. But yeah, I'm really excited to like actually be able to speak with people in Norwegian and like fully just have conversations. It'll just unlock a whole new world, honestly. I'm really lucky to be able to move to Norway. I mean, I'm a citizen because of my dad, but yeah, I'm looking forward to becoming fully Norwegian, if that makes sense. Because I don't think I can call myself fully Norwegian without speaking Norwegian and actually living there. So yeah, I'm excited, and I'm excited to figure everything out and make videos about it, hopefully. And yeah, just bring you guys along and share things, how they happen. And yeah, thanks so much for everyone who watched the vlog where I went to Norway, just kind of checking out Trondheim and Oslo. It was a really fun video to make. Yeah, I mean, it has like 400 views now, so I really appreciate that. That's a lot of views for me. And if you haven't seen that, then I guess I'll show it on the screen so you can check that out. But yeah, thanks so much for watching this maybe random video, but hopefully some people will find this interesting or entertaining in some way. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video.